Oh my god, what am I even supposed to say about that? I just got out of Deadpool and Wolverine and I'm losing my mind right now. That movie was all I ever wanted and more. Please, do yourself a favor and watch it. You will not regret this. Okay, it's been 15 seconds. I can finally swear without YouTube removing all of my skin, so holy shit, that was fucking insane. I feel like I'm gonna scream right now. I need to talk about this film so bad. It's only been a few hours since I saw the movie, so this is gonna be an unscripted review of Deadpool and Wolverine because I loved this film. But here's the thing. There's going to be so many spoilers in this video. I'm not going to hold back. So if you don't want to be spoiled, get out of here. What are you doing? Go watch the movie already. You got my recommendation. It's well worth your money. It's a great time. I had so much fun watching it. So go watch the movie and then immediately come back here to hear all of my thoughts because I have a lot to say and I'm so desperate for somebody to listen. Okay, that's enough stalling. Let's get into the review. The more I've thought about it, the more I love the meta story they set up in this movie. They introduced the concept of anchor points, which is basically the idea that when a being of utmost importance dies, their universe will start to decay until it's destroyed. Now, usually this process will take thousands of years, but through plot reasons, it's being sped up, and at first, I wasn't really a big fan of that, because I feel like it was a little forced, and the ramifications in the wider MCU felt a little too drastic to me, but I let it play out to see the wider scope of it all, and it formed this really interesting meta story about the Fox X-Men universe that I fell in love with. I think Deadpool is obviously a character that's at his strongest when you embrace the meta storytelling, and I think using these anchor points as a way to do a commentary on the Fox X-Men universe, it's a smart idea, and I think it works really well, and is part of the reason why I think this movie lands the way it does. Wolverine being the anchor point is a metaphor for how he was the only character that universe cared about. Once he died, it all just kind of fizzled out into a slow and sad death until the Disney-Fox merger just kind of killed things off. The Fox universe never really had their endgame where they had this big bombastic moment as you had this send-off to these characters. It just kind of died on Disney Plus with New Mutants, and nobody really watched that movie except me, which is not a good idea. Do not do it. So, to have a commentary on that idea that executives only cared about Wolverine, and the second he died, they just kind of gave up on the universe, I think it's a really interesting idea, and a story you can only tell in a Deadpool movie. Mr. Paradox being this stand-in for Kevin Feige, or the fans who don't want to wait until the universe dies, and we just want to see it end so we can move on to something better, is a great idea. Working as this audience surrogate for people who just want to move on, or with how Feige may want to just put that in the past and build his own X-Men universe, it's a really interesting concept to me, and I really like how the entire narrative is about how the Fox universe has more to offer than just Wolverine, and that it's worth saving. It's not what I expected at all. I really thought going into this that the movie would be about destroying the Fox universe in this meta way, but that's more of like a nihilistic point of view, and I like the idea of saving it to show that there's something worthwhile in there despite them never getting a chance to properly end things. Just because Wolverine was the most popular character and he got his ending doesn't mean that the universe did. There's still dozens of characters we're never gonna see again. You have cameo characters in here who we're gonna get to later, don't you worry, but they never got their ending like Wolverine did. They were just pruned and thrown away like garbage as studios gave up on the universe and didn't allow there to be any closure. These characters are so important to people, and just kind of disregarding them like they're nothing, it just feels like you're doing a disservice to these movies and these stories that thousands of people worked their asses off to do. So I like that this movie acts as a beautifully violent tribute to what's come before, as the old pre-MCU superhero movies are allowed closure and to get the ending that they deserve. By the time the end credits hit with that montage of all the different Fox films up to that point, I was genuinely tearing up, which I was not expecting at all. I never realized how much that universe meant to me until now. No matter how much I hate on him in videos for not giving me the comic accurate suits or doing Cyclops dirty, I grew up with those movies, and they're always gonna have a special place in my heart. From the first X-Men to Logan, I appreciate what these films did for the genre, and I'm happy to see these characters and this universe get closure and a really satisfying conclusion. And you know what, speaking of Logan, I can't tell you how much my jaw dropped at that opening sequence. That was insane and a phenomenal subversion from that initial announcement all those years ago where Ryan Reynolds said we're not going to touch Logan, to just kind of put everyone's worries at ease. And I think that's so funny that he intentionally did that, fully knowing that they were going to literally deface Logan's grave. People are already going to be mad about Hugh being back, so you may as well go all out and piss them off even more with probably my new favorite opening credit sequence of all time. It's a great way to set the tone with a dark comedy I've come to love from Deadpool, and the action in that opening sequence is outstanding. I know you're going to find a lot of people saying that this ruined Logan because this literally went into that universe and had Deadpool using his body as a weapon, but the reason that Logan works so well as a movie is because of the story, not because of the fact that it was used last time playing Wolverine. That helps, obviously, but I rewatched Logan just the other day and it still hits just as hard because of the way the story is told. It's an emotional movie and the narrative is what gets you invested. The actual death scene there is still left untouched. If they brought him back, that would absolutely be way too far. But I think that the fact that they go to the grave itself and show that Logan is dead and he's not coming back and they're not undoing any of that shows an amount of restraint and carefulness to where they're still making jokes at the expense of the movie, but they're not undoing anything. And as long as they're not undoing anything, it doesn't ruin Logan. And if it really makes you angry, just pretend it's a different universe. This is an infinite multiverse. You can just say that Deadpool went to another universe where everything happened the exact same way, except it's happening in the wintertime, and boom, there's your excuse. Doesn't hurt Logan at all, and I think that it's just a funny scene, and you gotta learn to have some fun and live a little. The horror of Deadpool ripping Wolverine's skeleton apart to kill an endless wave of TVA agents is so satisfying to watch and actually hilarious. It's such a bold way to start the movie by taking this beloved character and literally having him dig up his grave and use him as a weapon. It's beautiful. I loved every second of it. I had the biggest smile on my face. The moment that NSYNC Needle Drop hit, I knew I was in great hands with this movie. Who wouldn't want to see Deadpool murder people in the most brutal ways possible as he dances to Bye Bye Bye? That's what Deadpool is all about. Deadpool himself in this movie is also really great. In my opinion, Deadpool is at his best when he's this sad clown of a character. He's making jokes to cope and cheering everybody up, but deep down there's this internal sadness within him that is almost incurable to a point, and he's always trying to do better, but he always feels this deep depression lurking over him because he's a character who's been through a lot. And I think that if you just paint him as this jokey character with no darkness behind him, he just kind of comes off very corny, and you don't want to do that at all. So I really resent the idea that Deadpool is this Reddit character that only makes jokes, and that's it. He's very surface level. I hate that idea. That's only if he's written poorly. But this movie is far from doing that. This is by far the most I've enjoyed Deadpool as a character. Not to say I haven't loved the other two. Those are two great interpretations of Deadpool. But I really love this version here, where you see this more vulnerable side of Deadpool, to where the entire movie is about him feeling lost and trying to find purpose, because he doesn't think he matters. He's going through these marital issues with Vanessa, as she sees him more of like a selfish man, and he has to prove to her that he's selfless, but he doesn't know how. So he tries to join the Avengers in an insane scene to open the movie with. The fact that Deadpool has been in the MCU Sacred Timeline already like 6 years ago, that's a crazy retcon, but I was all for it, especially with Happy just casually being there. And you better believe I was studying that room for Easter eggs, whether that be the Iron Man 2 suitcase armor or Coulson's playing cards in the back. Oh my god, I was eating all that up. But the main point here is that this scene really sets up his entire arc for the film, where you see Happy kind of lay it all out when he says that Wade wants to join the Avengers for him, while the Avengers do this for others. And that sets him on this path where he takes the wrong answer and he just retires as being Deadpool. And it takes his universe dying for him to get back into the saddle and realizing that he needs to do these things for others and not for himself, and I really like that arc for him. This is also by far my favorite performance Ryan has given as Deadpool. He continues to prove why he's born to play this character. I'm so glad that some mysterious person leaked that footage all these years ago. Now we have him in this role, but I love to see Ryan showcase his acting skills here more, because a lot of the time it feels like in every movie he just plays Ryan Reynolds, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's got a great charm. He's one of the best improv actors working today, but I love that you see this sad clown aspect of the character come out here, and he gives this great performance. And things wrap up in a really satisfying way with this great arc for him as he goes out of his way to save the world. Not to jump ahead, but it would have made sense for Wolverine to do it and Wolverine to take that moment and kind of make the sacrifice he never got to. But seeing Wade go out of his way to trap Wolverine on the other side because he wants to finally step up and save the world and do something he never thought he could do, I just thought it was a really kind of wholesome ending for the character, which you don't often see with Deadpool. I just enjoyed seeing him actually step up and go from a character who viewed himself as a screw-up who couldn't do anything and didn't matter to someone who effectively just saved an entire universe, learning the lesson that it's not about gaining the approval of all these other people, it's about doing what he can to protect them. And I'm really glad that we just got to see this different side of Deadpool in this movie, because Ryan absolutely nailed it with the character. You could not find someone who understands Deadpool more than Ryan Reynolds, and I'm glad that he gets to put that into the big screen. Ryan Reynolds is also one of the most unsung actors I feel like in the comic book movie genre, because his commitment to playing this character is incredible. A lesser actor wouldn't be wearing the mask as much or wouldn't commit to the facial makeup all the time, but anytime we see Ryan on screen as Deadpool, he always has his face covered or scarred, and I really appreciate that. He's committed to the craft and actually doing this character justice, no matter how much comfort he has to lose, and I really appreciate that from him. You can tell how much he loves this character and wants to do things right. As for our other titular character of And Wolverine, it's like you're seeing an old friend for the first time in years and you just pick up right where you left off. I know we've had years to prepare for this, but it never really felt real to me until now, sitting in that theater and seeing Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine for the first time in somehow 7 years. It's been that long already, but just the fact that he's back, it reminds me of just how good he is in this role, and there's a reason he became so beloved and the most popular X-Men character, because Hugh Jackman is just a gem. There's nobody who could play this character quite like him. I know he's not comic accurate, but the performance he gives and the understanding of this character and what makes him so interesting is unmatched. I don't think there's anyone on the planet who could do a better job than him. Whoever they cast in the future, good luck to them, because they got big shoes to fill. Because Hugh Jackman is doing his very best work in this movie. I will stand by that. This is on par with his performance in Logan, which is saying a lot. It's obviously a very different performance. Logan is a much more depressing and sad movie, while he gets to show more of his comedic chops in this film, but it's still just as good as a performance. He brings so much depth and weight to this character. You can tell that he actually cares about what he's doing and he wants to see this character in a new position, and he's just giving it his all. He absolutely kills it as expected. He's not the cool badass we used to know. This man is a broken failure of a hero who doesn't think he can do anything right. It's a completely different interpretation of Wolverine, and it's not what I expected, but I think it's what we needed at this point for the character. He is by far the emotional core of the film for me. Everything revolves around his character and the position he's in from the start and how it wraps up by the end of the movie. This sad, alcoholic Wolverine who made the public hate mutants and the X-Men after lashing out from grief with their deaths. It's a really unique idea, and one that I'm really glad they got to explore here. If I had one big complaint from the movie, I would say that there's a lot of telling not showing, and I would have liked if we got to actually see some of that backstory. Even if we just saw this vicious killing spree he went on when Cassandra was messing around with his mind, I think it would go a long way. And with the incident that happened with the X-Men that traumatized him as it was, I would have liked to have seen all that. I get budgets are difficult to balance, and it would be hard to get these actors back, but you could do stand-ins and variants. They did that for other characters in the movie. Vinnie Jones isn't back as the Juggernaut. They just cast a new actor. So you could easily cast new actors and just show us Wolverine and how he reacts to their deaths, because I think it would have hit even harder. Not to say it's bad in this movie, because it definitely works, but I think it would work even better if we saw it happen rather than just it being explained to us. But still, I love this version of Wolverine. I think that he does a great job with it. I love the backstory. I love the look of the character. Obviously, seeing him in that yellow costume after all this time was incredibly surreal. I don't think that feeling is ever going to get tired. I've waited longer than my entire life for this moment. I am not as old as that first X-Men movie, so my entire life has been leading up to this point, waiting to see him in that costume, and it did not disappoint. I love that they gave the costume meaning and showed how important being an X-Man is, and Wolverine feels this sense of responsibility and pride in the suit now, after not wanting to wear it to make them feel like he didn't want to be there, and he didn't want to get vulnerable. And now he wears the suit as a reminder, and I just think it makes this moment even more powerful and special when there's a thematic reason for it in the film. And of course, when he put that cowl on, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, my pants were soaked. That was such an incredible moment. I had chills. I was freaking out. That costume looks so good in live action. When it comes in that third act as Wolverine's character arc is being completed, it's such perfect timing. Because I love the idea of Wolverine's arc in this movie just kind of being him learning to open up again and care again for people as he goes out of his way to save Wade, someone he was trying to murder in the beginning of the film. Now he was ready to lay down his life as he's kind of forced to develop a relationship again with Deadpool, and by proxy meeting other characters like X-23 and be reminded about what it's like to be a hero. You can see this man get this almost redemption in his eyes, and I just really appreciate that. I think they do such a great job with his arc and seeing this Wolverine grow from someone who's made mistakes to now owning up that mistakes and how they made him the hero he is today. It's a great message, and Hugh Jackman does a fantastic job of putting that into his performance alone. He is just phenomenal, and I absolutely love his dynamic with Deadpool in this movie. The main draw of this film are the interactions between Deadpool and Wolverine, and they do not disappoint. Hugh and Ryan's chemistry is incredible. The way they bounce off of each other feels so natural and feels like two frenemies just bickering with each other. It's like an old married couple in a way, but instead of arguing over dinner, they're slicing each other to death, which is how I want to go out. Having a straight man for Deadpool to play off of works really well. His humor is so over the top and outlandish. You want to have someone who's able to balance that out with not utter seriousness, but someone who is more just depressing and sick of Wade, because Deadpool is a character who at times could get a little annoying if written poorly, so to have a character who is there to be annoyed by Deadpool and shut him up works really well. I love the idea that they just hate each other completely. They're constantly fighting. The problems don't get solved right away between them. They actually have to work through them throughout the movie. And even when you think they're on the same page, it then goes into another fight between them. I love that dynamic a lot, where these guys do not really care for each other. They do at the end of the film a little bit because they're more willing to open up, but during that second act, they are going for each other's throats. It is brutal, and I think that's a really fun dynamic that you could only get between these two characters because they're healing factors, and it's such a unique thing that connects them. In the same way that they both are haunted by these regrets of their past, and they don't think they can move on with it, so they just kind of isolate themselves and throw away their old lives, when the solution is using their past to push forward into the future. So to basically summarize that, they matched each other's trauma, and only together could they help each other out and get through these issues. It's such a great dynamic. Deadpool and Wolverine aren't exactly two characters who in the comics movies are really buddy-buddy like this, but with Hugh and Ryan having such a history together cinematically and personally, I'm glad that we got to see this dynamic and this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of these characters from different eras come together in a way that is satisfying and does them both justice. As for the villain of the film, Cassandra Nova is here, played by Emma Corrin, who I think does a great job. Absolutely terrifying and electric performance in this movie. You can tell how much fun she was having on set here. I'm glad they actually did that weird birth origin with Charles. I wish we would have seen it. Is that gross to me to say? I feel like it's gross to say, but I kind of wish we would have seen that just because it's so absurd and over the top, but I'm glad that that's canon. But she works great as this maniacal, cackling villain. I feel like we don't get enough villains in the MCU who are just pure evil. We have a lot of tragic villains and people doing the wrong things for the right reasons, so it's nice to just have a character every now and then who's just a being of pure evil who just kind of wants to watch the world burn. Someone who's just happy to live in this garbage dump of the void and rule over as this tyrannical dictator and do all that she can to make everyone who lives there's lives hell. I do wish we could have seen a little bit more of her in the movie. I feel like she's not underused, but I just would have liked to have seen her backstory and to actually kind of get an understanding for what her motivations are and what fuels her to be this tyrant in the void. We get a little bit of that with how she was killed and she feels like this is her only purpose, to be this ruthless tyrant where now people can do what she wants after Charles nearly assassinated her in the womb, which is, again, that is just one of the most absurd things in all of comics, and I mean that in a good way. I just wish we got to know her more as a character, because with a villain like Cassandra Nova, there is so much potential here, and I just don't think that they reached the full potential they had with the character in this movie. It's not to say that she's bad, she's really good in this, she's very fun to watch, but I think for more of a rewarding experience, it would have been nice to enrich that character's background just enough to where we can get an understanding of why they're doing this, because I think the idea of why gets a little bit lost in the movie, but that's all really I have to say. Because she's so intimidating in this film. That hand effect is so creepy. The way that it moves around the eyes and you can see them bulging out of the head as her fingers go through the nostrils. It's just gross. I don't like thinking about it even right now, but it's such a cool effect and it makes her stand out. Just a fun presence on screen. Emma is chewing the scenery. I enjoyed it a lot. I think she does a great job. She's a very good villain in the film, and I just wish we could have seen more of her. And special shout out to Matthew McFadden as Mr. Paradox. He's very funny in this movie. I like how he starts off very confident, but you can tell he's playing with this undertone that he has an ulterior motive, and you can see him spiraling more and more to where the point that Deadpool figures out his plan, doesn't agree with it, and he just immediately prunes him. Like, that is so below him. He just doesn't even want to deal with it, and he just dunks him out of there in the void. I think he makes for a great villain in the film. If you watched my video, obviously I thought he was going to be a villain. I got it completely wrong with his motives, but I do like the idea that he's someone who is left in charge of these dying universes, and he doesn't want to wait thousands of years, and he feels like it's better to mercy kill them in a way. And I think it's an interesting idea to just put these universes out of their misery the second they lose their anchor point. I love the idea since the Loki Season 2 finale that the TVA is kind of shattering a bit, where you have Hunter B-15, who was nice to see here, but she is running this main TVA area now, and you have offshoots like General Dox from Season 2, or now Mr. Paradox, who are trying to do things their own way because they don't agree with it, and I just think that's an interesting thing to do for the TVA. He's locked up now, but I think it would be fun to see him back if that's possible. I don't know how, but he's such a fun presence on screen. Some very solid villains in this movie all around. But I know what you're all waiting for. You want to hear me talk about these cameos, because there are a lot of big surprises in this movie that had me losing my mind in that theater. I had to stop myself from screaming and cheering at the screen because it was insane, some of the things they pulled off here. I don't know how they managed to keep this much a secret, especially with modern scooper culture ruining everything. I applaud them so much for having this much restraint and not showing so much of the movie to keep these surprises hidden, because they do a great job of that. I'd also like to set the record straight that there are definitely some cameos in this movie, but most of them are more surprising supporting characters. There is a great surprising supporting cast in this film, starting with my absolute favorite one, Chris Evans as the Human Torch. I called it in my video. They even did this subversion with Captain America. I want you to ignore everything else in my prediction video besides that. I am so happy to see him back in the MCU in this way. It was just such a cool moment to see him back. Obviously, those Fantastic Four movies are far from perfect, but that cast was really solid, and Chris Evans was a great choice for the Human Torch. To see him back in this role one more time is genuinely insane. It's one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to experience in a theater. I felt my inner child come to life as you see him play this very different version of the character, where instead of the normal goody two-shoes Boy Scout war criminal Captain America, now you just have this fed-up, swearing like a sailor Human Torch who basically hates his life in the void and is trying to do whatever he can to get out of there. I enjoy every scene he's in so much, especially with that post-credit scene, which was very funny. I was not expecting this to be the post-credit scene, but I love the joke of Human Torch saying all those things Deadpool said. He actually said them all along. Verbatim. It's just so funny. I'm so happy we got to see him back and be in the movie for like 5 minutes, which is a lot more time than I ever expected him to be. It was just nice to see him again after all this time. Just like X-23, who they revealed in the trailer a week before, which I can't believe they actually showed that so soon. But the reveal in the movie still hits really well. It's so nice to see her back. She was one of the best parts of Logan. Daphne Keane is a great actress. I would honestly love if she was the main MCU's version of Wolverine, if they just had her play a variant of that character, because she is way too good to never be seen again, and it's a way you can kind of continue that Hugh Jackman legacy while not burdening someone else with a recast. She ties really well into the movie thematically as someone who Logan actually did help, and he bought her enough time to give her a life, and while she may have not gotten an ending, she got to grow up because of Logan's sacrifice. So now to see him meet to where this Logan has no recollection of her while he changed her life, it's a really interesting dynamic that I would have loved to see more of, but I'm just glad to see them reunited after all this time. They have such a fun dynamic together, and it's crazy that we live in a world where we can see this. Along with seeing stuff like Channing Tatum as Gambit in that insanely silly voice, but he committed to it like crazy, which I have to respect. I love the joke in the movie that his universe never got to meet him because the Gambit movie, as we all know, was stuck in development hell for like a decade until Disney bought Fox and just shelved it. I'm glad he finally got a chance to play this character. We were hearing about him playing the role for so long, so to see him actually get to do it one time before Marvel brings in their own version of Gambit, presumably, it was just really nice and rewarding for him. Even if it is just Deadpool relentlessly making fun of him for a long portion of the movie, it was totally worth it. Jennifer Garner was here as Elektra. They unfortunately spoiled that ahead of time, so I knew that was going to happen in the movie. I'm not going to lie to you, I haven't seen the Elektra movie. I've heard it's dog shit, so I'm not going to go watch it, but it's nice to see that era of comic book movies represented here. It's not reserved to just those Fox X-Men films. This is a tribute to movies that came before the MCU, so I think it's nice to include her in this movie and just give her that spotlight. Someone I absolutely didn't expect, though, is Wesley Snipes as Blade, which I don't even, like, what? How? He and Ryan Reynolds hated each other on the set of Blade Trinity. Those two did not work well together, so for that alone, I was shocked to see it. But a character who kicked off this superhero boom finally coming back is crazy. Like, there's no other way. That is insane. I never thought we'd see him pick up the sword again. A character so good, they completely changed everything about Comic Blade to match the movie, and people were okay with that kind of synergy at the time. I like the joke where he says there's only going to be one Blade, and then Deadpool looks right into the camera. I cannot wait to see Mahershala as Blade, hopefully sooner rather than later. One of my favorite parts of this movie, though, was the Wolverine montage at the beginning, when Deadpool is trying to find a version of Wolverine that could anchor his universe, where we get to see Hugh Jackman as a short Wolverine, which I would have loved if they could have found a way to make him that the entire movie. I get they can't, it's expensive, it looks very silly, but it was so funny to see him and his big head on this tiny little body as he finally plays a version of Wolverine that actually matches the comics. You get other fun moments like him in the brown and yellow suit. I kind of wish he wore that suit the entire movie because god did it look so good. And fighting the Hulk, like we got a Hulk appearance in this movie. That blew my mind. They reenacted the Hulk versus Wolverine fight almost. The shot where Hulk's face is reflected in Wolverine's claws is one of the hardest in the entire MCU now. They had Old Man Logan appear. Just casually throwing that in there was crazy. They even recreated some really famous Wolverine comic covers, like the shot of him crucified on the X with a sea of bloody skulls just goes so hard recreated in live action. I can't believe they did that. Henry Cavill? Talk about surprising. Henry Cavill playing Wolverine is a sentence I never thought I'd say. Really good for him after DC screwed him as Superman and he never got a chance to do it right, and then they correctly rebooted with James Gunn's movie. Now they have him playing Wolverine? Like, that is an insane thing that nobody saw coming, and I'm so glad that they got to do it because that is wild that we live in a universe where Henry Cavill has now played Wolverine. He's the second actor to ever play Wolverine now. I don't think we realize how big of a deal that is. That's wild. I still can't believe that. I don't think he should play the main MCU version of Wolverine, so I think it's nice to kind of put him in there as a wink and a nod to people who were fan casting him as that. It's just crazy to me. What a world, man. What a movie. I really appreciate how the cameos were done in this movie, to where they're tastefully there. They're not just there for jangling keys nostalgia value. Each cameo is surgically chosen by Ryan Reynolds for the most impact in the movie, whether that be Blade, Elektra, and Gambit as these kind of freedom fighters who are there to show that they never got their endings. And it's done in a really good way that enhances the narrative. They're not just there for fan service, they're there because it makes the story better. You don't want to have cameos there just for the sake of it to get butts in seats and really milk that nostalgia cow. You want to do it in a way that's tasteful and respectful of the source material and the audience's intelligence, and I really like how they handle it in this movie, they're all done for a reason. It is a lesson to any other superhero movie, not to name names, The Flash, on how to actually do cameos in movies, because you could not do it better than they did in this film. Personally, I think this is also the funniest Deadpool movie. Not to say the other two aren't funny. I rewatched them this week in anticipation. I don't think the humor is aged as well because it's very topical humor. So some jokes like the dubstep bit in Deadpool 2 hasn't really aged well in my opinion. But I do really love the comedy in this movie. It's so funny the way that these two bounce off each other, to where Deadpool is making more situational humor rather than reference humor. You still have that reference humor, don't get me wrong, but it's more of comedy based off of the situation, which I think works really well for the movie. I do appreciate anytime someone makes fun of the Fox universe. I'm a happy man anytime someone points out all the flaws from those films, or the way they're unashamedly poking fun at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that's fun to just kind of talk about Marvel's recent past and how things have been going, just kind of bring it all to the surface. Nothing is off limits. It's a really good way to poke fun at all this stuff, like the sequence where Deadpool just talks about how tired the multiverse concept is, which I think the movie does utilize really well, but you can't deny that there's been an overexposure to the multiverse in recent years from not just Marvel, but mostly from other studios who are using it way too much. My favorite joke in this movie was when Deadpool said that Channing Tatum's dialect coach was a minion. I don't know why. That was the funniest thing ever to me. I think this movie utilizes comedy really well. Not every joke hits, but that's fine because you're probably going to have another one coming up really quickly. There's a great joke ratio in this movie to where it's not beating you over the head with jokes, but it's coming at a rate where I was laughing for the vast majority of the film. I think this movie's going to age really well with the humor. It's going to be something I see myself coming back to a lot just to have a good laugh. And let me just say real quick, the action in this movie is top notch. The choreography does not miss once. It has some of the best action scenes in not just the MCU, but any comic book movie, whether it be just seeing these two characters with their signature katanas and claws just go at it in such inventive and creative ways, with this fast-paced action with very few takes as you see them using creative camera shots. It just seems like to me that the goal of this movie was to do the coolest possible thing at every turn, and it pays off so well. The fight scenes are so much fun to watch. They completely lean into the R rating with how much gore there is, which I really think is great. It goes a long way in making it stand out from other projects in the MCU that can't show that, to where now you can see Wolverine decapitate a guy and Deadpool delimbing people as blood spurts out like a fountain. It is such a beautiful, violent, and disgusting bloodbath, and I am a sick freak who eats that stuff up. It looked really good. The whole movie did, honestly. I know there's a lot of annoying discourse with the color grading. I think it works when having the void a little duller to show that this is some lifeless place where everything goes to die. It makes perfect sense to me. The movie has some really gorgeous shots in there. There are some places where the CGI is a little noticeable, but it didn't bother me too much. Alright, let's talk about the ending of that film, because they left the door open for the future, but I appreciate that they didn't heavily tease anything. Deadpool and Wolverine survived the end of the film. I was not exactly shocked about that. I feel like it's basically a lock that they're both going to appear in Secret Wars in the future, but I liked it. This is just all self-contained within the movie. The story isn't left on any desperate cliffhangers that they're trying to get another sequel. It's all in the one movie, which is really nice. This is how things should be done. Obviously, there is some tease for the future with that Thor foreshadowing, the Thor-shadowing, I'm going to start calling it. As we now know, the TVA have destined Deadpool and Thor to meet someday in the future, with Thor sobbing over Deadpool in his arms. It's just Dark World footage repurposed, but now it's canon. That is a future for Deadpool to look forward to. We all know that's going to happen in Secret Wars one day. I think that's definitely the next time we're going to see these two characters. Honestly, I do think that if they're going through some Avengers 5 struggles, and maybe I plan on making a video about this in the future, we'll see. I wouldn't mind an Avengers vs. X-Men movie, as you put the MCU 616 universe against Deadpool's 1005 universe. I think I got that code right. You put those two universes together and you make them fight to be the last surviving universe as it's all collapsing in itself before Battleworld is created. I think you can make a really good event film as you pit these two worlds against each other, and I don't know if it's going to go that way. There's just a surprise pitch to throw in here at the video, but I'm just glad that the movie ends on a positive note. These character arcs are wrapped up in a satisfying way, and it doesn't heavily tease a sequel. It just kind of is self-contained within its own movie. Overall, though, I loved every second of this movie. When I didn't have the biggest smile on my face, I was tearing up from how good the emotional beats were. It has its flaws, but I can't remember the last time I had this much fun in a movie theater. If you haven't watched it, first of all, what are you doing watching to the end of the video? There's so many spoilers. Are you insane? But I cannot recommend this enough. It is a blast from start to finish, and not just one of the best MCU movies, but one of the best comic book movies in general. Gun to my head, if I had to rate it, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. But that's only if there's a gun to my head, which there definitely isn't right now. This is not a cry for help. I'm not someone who thinks that the MCU has ever really fallen off, but I think this film is a return to form as this huge event that's going to get casual audiences back on board, and I think that this is just a phenomenal movie. I love it so much. I'm going to be thinking about it for the rest of the night. I can't remember the last time a movie made me this happy. I'm sitting here recording this video, still smiling because of how much I love this film. So happy that this movie exists, and that they found a way to naturally build upon the Deadpool movies and bring him into the MCU in a way. He may still be in his own little universe, but now he's properly under the Marvel Studios banner, and I could not feel better about the future. Now, if you excuse me, I have a popcorn bucket to go fill up and a movie to rewatch, so I'm going to end the video there. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. What did you guys all think about the movie? I would love to hear what everyone else has to say and continue the conversation down below. If you want to see another video like this, you can click right over here. If you don't do it, I'm gonna pop Chris Evans like a balloon, so you better get on it.